Thank you. Let's have a seat. Be comfortable. So I was thinking about how appropriate it is that today, which is Saturday, is the day for Moksha, the day for our inquiry into Moksha. Saturday is Saturn's day. As I was saying the other day, each day of the week is named after a planet. So Saturday is Saturn's day. And Saturn is considered in the Vedic system of astrology to be the greatest teacher. Greatest teacher is often referred to as Kronos, so the Lord of Time, because Saturn, in its archetypal influence, teaches us about the beginnings, middles, and endings of everything in the relative sphere of life, all of the productions of relative life. And yet Saturn also teaches us to surrender to that which is not in time, which is beyond time, which is I am. I was noticing the crow. I'm sure some of you heard the crow, Brother Crow out there. And, Saturn, crow is actually the bird, one of the totems for Saturn in the tantric tradition. In fact, if you're having troubles in your life sometimes in India, they have these various upayas, or these remedial measures which people do. Many of them are associated with, giving charity to people less fortunate, especially for Saturn, giving charity to people who have had misfortune in their lives, maybe even more unfortunate than ourselves. So doing some effort to make their lives better. But and sometimes they'll recommend these kind of strange tantric things like charity to a black dog, for example, because in the old tradition, the black dogs were kind of, they didn't have a good reputation. They were kind of kept as outcasts. And Saturn is often referred to as the outcast because it's the furthest from the sun of the visible planets. But also crows. And so sometimes it sounds strange to us in the West, but they'll recommend charity to a crow, feeding a crow, particularly on a Saturday. And so I was listening to that crow, because we really haven't, most of the bird sounds we've heard this week have been kind of sweet and, lovely sounds. Birds that I'm not familiar with, I've been hearing. But that crow was kind of insistent, right during our meditation. And of course, our first tendency is to kind of go, kind of cringe a little bit. The crow is not a sweet singing bird, and just like Saturn is not a sweet planet. It's not like Venus. Saturn can be tough. Saturn can be harsh even at times as the Lord of Time. And so I thought to myself, I wonder what that crow is saying to me, or to us, to anyone. And I started to listen, rather than kind of, and I started listening a little bit more and a little bit more. And then I heard what he was saying. He was saying, I am. I am. I really heard him say that. I heard him say it several times, I am, in his crow language. And as soon as I was very clear in what I was hearing, I heard him say, don't forget. And then he left. And then we heard that psh right after that. So I'm thanking that Brother Crow this morning for that reminder, I am, which is really the message for Moksha. Moksha is the fourth of the Purusharthas, our spiritual values. And in many ways, Moksha is the pinnacle of all the Purusharthas. It's what every spiritual tradition points toward. And in fact, among the first three Purusharthas, which are really more associated with the first half of our lives, developing a sense of purpose, significance. How can I contribute? Establishing our basic resources, financial resources. How will I support myself? And comma, who will go with me? How will I, and how can I be more creative? So in the second half of life, as we, not that, of course, it's isolated to the second half of life, but it's more the fact that, as we fulfill our dharma, as we live our purpose, whatever that might be, and really fully live our dharma. And as householders, we acquire the resources we need to support families, to support our lives and existence. And we cultivate relationships. But in the second half of life, and this is traditional in India, they begin to kind of let go of all that. They begin to, at some point in elderhood, many people will choose to go to an ashram or monastery and just devote the rest of their lives to spiritual practice, to moksha, to liberation, self-realization. So I think of moksha really as being, when the fruit is ripe, it leaves the tree or the vine. It falls away, and this is a metaphor for moksha in some of the great mantras of India. So we have to kind of fulfill our dharma, fulfill our artha, fulfill our kama, and then we're able to really let go in the direction of moksha. The sole question that we associate, or I associate with moksha, is who, and all of us do, who or what am I? Who or what am I? And, Deepak gave such a beautiful discourse yesterday afternoon on the ending of suffering and about the I am. I've been listening to Deepak for many, many years, and honestly, I never get tired of listening to him talk. Although, over the years, more and more, I began to really start to hear what he was saying and really get it. And I'm so grateful to him because he's been so constant in his delivering of that message. It's been his dharma. And even though he's found new and creative ways to say much the same thing and to point the same direction, sometimes we have to hear it a number of times, and then it finally starts to dawn on us. It finally starts to sink in. So I loved that, his presentation about I am. It made so much sense. I hope it did to everyone. So as I said, moksha is the pinnacle of the Purusharthas. And in some ways, it sort of is the already always so. The I am, of course, is already always so. It is the source and essence of everything. It's that from which everything emerges and everything returns to. So it holds and even transcends the first three of the Purusharthas. Moksha is the motivation for any worthy religion or spiritual tradition, is to take us to a place where we don't need it anymore, where we can truly, fully trusting in the absolute, we can surrender. Moksha is consciousness itself. It is the one consciousness from which everything arises, including ourselves. We are all one consciousness. We're part of that ocean of consciousness. We're individual waves. We have individual expression. We have a beginning, middle, and an ending as a production of the I am, to use Deepak's expression. And then we return at some point into the ocean, back into the oneness. But we're always part of, and are always of that oneness. It is that in which everything arises, endures, and eventually falls away. It's the source and essence of everything. So moksha is liberation. Moksha is liberation. And by the way, when we asked that question earlier in the beginning of the retreat, what was it that brought you here? What called us to retreat? And I assure you, it's that longing for freedom, that moksha. That's why we're here. That's why we came. That's why we have come to our spiritual practices and spiritual teachers. when we ask the question, or when we hear that moksha means liberation, self-realization, we have to ask, well, what does that mean? What are we being liberated from? And I think Deepak explained it so beautifully yesterday, that we're so identified with the expression, the production of I am, the physical body, the personality that we've developed in order to feel safe in the world, the roles that we play, all the different roles, and we play many roles, and the relationships that we attach to. We become very involved in all of these things and identified, and then we're not so fine. We're not so fine. But then Saturn, and just to take that a theme a little further, Saturn comes along and begins to sort of scrape away things. It helps us to let go of things. Saturn brings us to humility. It brings us to our knees sometimes. Saturn is associated with the dark night of the soul, which we've talked about a bit, which is where we really feel helpless and we really feel that we don't know what to do and we feel alone and isolated. And sometimes we have to be on our knees before we open ourselves and ask for help. Say, help, I need help. And that's how Saturn is the greatest teacher, because it brings us to that place where we can let go of our preoccupation with the me and all the things associated with that, and open ourselves to that one consciousness. So moksha means liberation through self-realization. Self-realization means awakening to that which is already so. It's so right now, and it's always so. And that's in many ways the point of religions and spiritual practices, to have things that continue to help us remember that, to come back to that memory of wholeness. And ultimately, moksha means spiritual maturity. It's when the fruit is ripe, and we really can surrender. The realization that consciousness is the context of all of the content of our lives. Always. It's the context of the content. The content is the production that Deepak talked about. Everything that we take ourselves to be, everything that we experience in the relative sphere of life. But all of that is held in the context of consciousness. It's like the air we breathe, it's always present. But it's so close to us that we don't see it until we start to see it. So freedom from the limitations of the body, the emotions, the mind. Freedom from the limitations of the pain body that Deepak talked about, which is kind of an illusion, but nevertheless, it feels real at times. But as we begin to transcend more and more, we're freed from some of those limitations. Freedom from the limitations of our emotions, the emotions that hold us tight, the knots, the K-N-O-T-S, knots that exist in our subtle bodies that get triggered by things in our present life. And then we go back and we feel those knots. And so it's untying and unraveling and loosening those knots that begins to allow us to be free. It's like the fist held tight, and eventually we start to relax the fist and open with the emotions. And certainly freedom from the limitations of our own minds. The incessant narrative that's always going on that Deepak pointed to yesterday. Who's talking? Who's in there talking? It's a good question to ask, who is that voice that's in there talking? So moksha means freedom from attachment to suffering in the story of me, the story of me. And as we said earlier in the week, we all have a story that we are attached to and identify with. But sooner or later, we can begin to surrender that attachment and really be where we are in the present moment. And as Deepak said yesterday, also freedom from the fear of death. which is something to contemplate. Where does that fear come from? Where does it live in us? Do we really know what death is, that we are so afraid of it? What is afraid of death? What in us is afraid of death? These are important inquiries. And I assure you, we have the ability to inquire into that very subject that we're all don't want to look at, that fear of death, and inquire into it. The great Saint Ramana Maharshi, the great teacher, non-dual teacher, Advaita Vedanta teacher, at a very early age, made that very inquiry. I think, I forget what his age was, 12, 13, something like that. But one day he just spontaneously wondered, what is death? And why am I afraid of it? And he inquired into it. And through that process alone, he became liberated. He saw that it wasn't real, that there was nothing about it to be afraid of. So that's it. That's an inquiry for us at some point to consider, why am I afraid of death? What is it that I'm so afraid of? We have the ability to know. So moksha means letting go of all identification with a separate sense of self. So in a sense, it's really what we talked about in the area of Dharma, where we're letting go of the preoccupation of what's in it for me. How can I get what I need? How can I stay safe? How can I continue to surrender that to okay, I'm here. How can I help? I want to be useful in this life with whatever talents, gifts, and abilities I have. So Dharma takes us to moksha. If we live Dharma, if we all stay in alignment with natural law, and stay in alignment with our moral values, not again in a fundamentalist sense, but when we're really true to that inner guidance system and we know what the right choice is in any moment, eventually it takes us to a place where we really can surrender. Surrender and trust in the union with the divine. Jake, or anybody, Devi, I wonder if you could bring my little folder, my little file that's sitting right in front of you, if you could just bring that up here. Thank you very much. So moksha means happiness and bliss, and actually being at home in our true nature, because our true nature is already so. We don't need to manufacture it. We don't need to create it. We don't need to learn it. It's always been there, and it will always be so. Thank you, dear. Thanks. Om Namah Shivaya, the great mantra from the Sanskrit. Om Namah Shivaya means I bow to absolute consciousness. It's the same as not my will, but the divine will be done. Or Insha'Allah, if God be willing. Every spiritual tradition has this prayer in some form, which is just surrendering, trusting, opening to that which is already present here, now, right now. This beautiful quote from Bhagavad Gita, weapons cannot cleave it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot drown it, and wind cannot dry it. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, unmoving, ancient, unmanifest, unthinkable, unborn, changeless, ever present to all apparent past and future time. It's a beautiful quote. I wanted to just ask you to take a little short journey with me now. So if it's comfortable, you can just rest your notebook on your lap, and let's just, whatever makes you comfortable, and just begin to bring your attention inside and sit comfortably for a minute, just relaxing where we are. Just begin to settle in to the silence of your own being. Settling again into the body and feeling the chair and the floor and the earth, and recognizing that no effort is required to be here. No effort is required to be here now. We're held by something much greater and more vast than ourselves. And begin just for a moment to sense the circulation of the blood moving in the body right now, the tingling sensation that we feel when we bring our attention there. Notice there's no effort in that movement of the circulation through the body. And notice the movement of the breath and the breathing, effortlessly moving in and out. And now just bring your awareness to the heart center. Now begin to imagine allowing everything to be exactly as it is, without any interference on our side. Nothing to change, nothing to improve. No comparing of this moment to any idea of how it should be. Even allowing everything in our own body and nervous system to just be as it is. Nothing to get to. Anticipating nothing. Nothing to do and nowhere to go. Nothing to achieve or acquire or become. Nothing to relinquish. Imagine what that might be like, allowing everything to just be as it is. Imagine no resistance to anything. No resistance. Leave everything. No trying. No struggle against the universe by struggling against this moment. I am accepting everything as it is. This moment is now and always as it should be. In this state of acceptance, I can take responsibility for any and all of my projections, my judgments, my dissatisfactions, anything I may perceive as a problem, or anything I may perceive as lacking. No blame of anything or anyone, including myself. My outer experience is a direct reflection of my inner state. I can choose how to be in this moment and to see it as a creative opportunity. Now imagine I have no longer anything to defend. Nothing to defend. I am safe and non-threatened. I'm defenseless, and allow that feeling of defenselessness to move out from me into the universe. In being completely undefended, I do not give birth to any enemy or adversity. And in relinquishing any fixed point of view, I can allow for all points of view. I am open to all, and I am the space in which all may be experienced. In this moment, there is nothing missing. I am whole and complete as I am. Everything is as it is. I just want to share a prayer, and you can keep your eyes closed for a moment. I want to share a prayer from one of my dear friends, Debbie Ford, who gave a great deal of light to this world in her relatively short life. This prayer is called Drenched in Holiness. Dear God, Spirit, Divine Mother, on this day, I ask you to grant this request. May I know who I am and what I am every moment of every day. May I be a catalyst for light and love and bring inspiration to those whose eyes I meet. May I have the strength to stand tall in the face of any perceived conflict, and the courage to speak my voice whenever it is needed. May I have the humility to follow my heart and the passion to live my soul's desires. May I seek to know the highest truth and dismiss the gravitational pull of my lower self. May I embrace and love the totality of myself, my darkness as well as my light. May I be brave enough to hear my heart and to let it soften so that I may gracefully choose faith over fear. Today is my day to surrender anything that stands between the sacredness of my humanity and my divinity. May I be drenched in holiness and engulfed by your love. May all else melt away. And so it is. So now we can begin to slowly open our eyes. So moksha is associated with, in the seven spiritual laws, with the law of pure potentiality. Deepak says in this law, we are in our essential state, pure consciousness. And pure consciousness, the I am, is pure potentiality. It is the field of all possibilities and infinite creativity. Being infinite and unbounded, it is also pure joy. Other attributes of consciousness are pure knowledge, infinite silence, perfect balance, invincibility, simplicity, and bliss. This is our essential nature. Our essential nature is one of pure potentiality. That is who we are, the I am. The law of pure potentiality could also be called the law of unity, because underlying the infinite diversity of life is the unity of one all-pervasive spirit, one consciousness, whatever we want to call it. It doesn't have a name. There is no separation of anything. The field of pure potentiality is the true self. And the more we experience our true nature, the closer is the field of pure potentiality. That's why we meditate. So self-referral We've heard these terms this week a few times, and self-referral versus object referral, direct experience of the self or self-referral means that our internal reference point is our own spirit, not something that can be contained. It is boundless, that spirit, and not our reference point being objects of our experience. The opposite of self-referral is object referral, which is conditional, when we're influenced by objects outside the self, which includes situations, circumstances, people, and things. And in that state, we seek validation and approval from others. We give our power away. We forget ourselves. We forget who we are. And our thinking and our behavior are always in anticipation of a response. It's fear-based, object referral. It creates a need, often, for external power or control. This futile effort to feel safe. The ego wants to control, and the ego wants to compare itself to others. And the need for approval, and the need to control things, and the need for external power are needs that are based in fear. And it's associated with the Sanskrit word pragyaparat, which is the mistake of the intellect I spoke about yesterday. When we start to develop this belief that somehow the source of our life is outside of us, whether it's nourishment or approval or safety, whatever we might think it is. In object referral, our internal reference point is more of our ego, that fear-based, self-defended idea of me. The ego, however, is not what we really are. The ego is the self-image. It's our social mask. It is the role we are playing at any time. And it thrives on approval and wants to control and is sustained by power because it lives in fear. So self-referral, then, which happens very easily and effortlessly, it doesn't require an effort. We don't have to manufacture it, as I said. It's really just relaxing into our own nature, which is what we do when we meditate. So true self, spirit, the soul, is completely free of limitation, completely free of fear, and is immune to criticism and unfearful of any challenge and feels beneath no one. And since the essence of everyone is the same self, as we said before, the same spirit in different disguises, it feels superior to no one also. Self-referral power is permanent. It's always existent. It does not depend on the mind. We have the expression being in the state of grace. It is unconditional, true love, oneness. State of grace is always available to us. We access the field of pure potentiality, or moksha, through the daily practice of silence, meditation, non-judgment, self-inquiry, and spending time in nature, all things that we've considered this week. Self-referral consciousness is infinite creativity, freedom, and bliss. I love this quote from Adi Shankara, who Deepak spoke about the other night. It's really a prayer. At dawn, I meditate in my heart on the truth of the radiance of the radiant inner self. This true self is pure being, awareness, and joy, the transcendent goal of the great sages. The eternal witness of the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states. I am more than my body, mind, and emotions. I am that undivided spirit. At dawn, I worship the true self that is beyond the reach of mind and speech, by whose grace speech is even made possible. This self is described in the scriptures as not this, not this. It is called the God of the gods. It is unborn, dying, one with all. At dawn, I salute the true self that is beyond all darkness, brilliant as the sun, the infinite, eternal reality, the highest. on whom this whole universe of infinite forms is superimposed. It is like a snake and a rope. The snake seems real, but when you pick it up, it's just a rope. This world is ever-changing, fleeting, but this eternal light is real and everlasting. Who recites in early morning these 3 sacred shlokas, which are the ornaments of the 3 worlds, obtains the supreme abode. Adi Shankara. So we have a little time before we finish, and I wanted to offer, as I've tried to do each day, some inquiries that might be relevant for this subject of moksha. Seems ironic even to call moksha a subject, right? Right? But it is that which all of these inquiries can bring us to. As I said earlier in the week, I love that quote from Ramana Maharshi. Says, the point of inquiry is not to grasp onto an answer. It is to ultimately eliminate the questioner to the realization of that which is. So we asked this earlier in the week, what inside of me has drawn me to this silent retreat? And along with that, we might also ask the question, what has drawn me to my spiritual life and my spiritual practices and spiritual fellowship and companionship and convocation, whether here or elsewhere? What inside of me has drawn me to these? Another nice inquiry to contemplate is, what do I discover? Of course, we've been doing this all week. What do I discover when I let go of speech and thought? And of course, that's the practice of mauna, is initially stopping with the external speech and observing noble, sustained silence. But eventually, mauna of the mind begins to occur, and the thoughts begin to settle down more and more. It's really the beauty of silence practice. And hopefully some of you, maybe all of you at some point this week, had some moments of that, where there was just the stillness of I am and the presence of being where we are. Who or what is aware now in any moment? Who or what is aware? Again, we're not looking for an answer here. The I am presence. And the inquiry we had from earlier in the week, where is silence in this moment? Where is silence now? We can always inquire about this because it's always available. And where does silence go when I'm not aware of it? And what keeps me from resting in silence, resting in being? What in any moment keeps us from being awake to that I am presence, which is always available in every moment? What might it be like if I stopped speaking for my whole life? Did anyone have that thought this week? Wonder what it would be like if I never had to speak again. What would that be like? It's something to inquire about, consider. Because in that same inquiry is the inquiry around speech at any time. Is this true, what I'm about to say? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Like Dalai Lama said, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Many times it's not. Many times it's not necessary. What happens when I allow everything to be as it is? That simple intention we can make part of our meditation practice before as we're settling down. Just have the intention to allow everything to be as it is, which is an ironic statement because it's not as though we actually allow everything to be as it is, because everything is as it is. So we're just surrendering to that. So have a few minutes now to just be with your thoughts and your journal, your inquiries. And anytime, if you all wanted to begin to pass out those cards, were you waiting to do that? Yes, sir. Anytime. Go ahead. Thanks. I did want to say one thing too, and I'll just interrupt your journaling for a moment, because several of our companions this week will have to leave before this evening's closing ceremony. And we want to let them know that we will hold them in our hearts this evening, even though they can't be there. And I hope that those of you that do have to leave a little bit early will hold silence at some point this evening and just be here with us in spirit. And even though you may be doing things to get ready to leave, packing and so on, I'd like you to consider one thing this week that you might have realized about yourself and about your life that you would like to let go of, that you would like to release. It could be a behavior. It could be a substance. It could be or even a relationship. It could be an attitude that we maybe are addicted to, maybe a negative pattern of thinking. It could be even a lack of trust in the I am. But something that may have occurred to you this week that you realize doesn't serve you any longer, that you can begin to let go. Don't need it anymore. We can say thank you for sharing and let it go. But also, consider something that maybe you've realized this week that has occurred to you or dawned on you, associated with the longing that brought us here. Something that you would like to invite into your life going forward, our lives going forward. And by the way, this is something I wanted to say to everyone, to consider today something that you want to relinquish, something that may have occurred to you during the retreat, and something that you may have realized that you want to invite and request of the I am to become a part of our lives. So give a little reflection to that today, because it'll have relevance tonight with our closing ceremony. So those of you that do have to leave, consider that. And this evening, when you're on your way somewhere to going back, because none of us are going back to anything. There's no going back. We're going into something. We don't know what, because whatever was before is gone. So wherever we happen to be going, that we're in some way holding that intention for ourselves to release something that was no longer serving us, and something that we would like to invite in. But those of you that are leaving, be gentle with yourselves. Take it easy. Don't feel that you have to collide with the world outside. We've been kept really kind of comfortable and safe and peaceful here in this beautiful place. So remember that simple recommendation. Just take it as it comes. And the other one that I like is, you never know what's going to happen next. So be gentle, take it as it comes, and continue to come back to the silence that you've experienced here this week. That's always available. It's always present. In fact, it is the one real truth. So those of you that have to leave, when you do, we thank you for being part of this convocation. Thank you for bringing your coherence to all of us. And as I said, we'll hold you in our hearts this evening. So we can continue to journal for a little while longer, finish up, and we have a few more minutes. We'll wait. Well, boy, that says it all, I think. We're also, I was going to mention it later, but we're also wanting to hold the intention for continued healing and forgiveness for, the deep wound to our country that we commemorate on this day of September 11th. We want to hold that desire for healing and forgiveness, and for all those that may have been deeply and profoundly affected by that, and even still are affected by that. So we hold a space of love for all of them at this time in our hearts.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, so a couple reiterations of our schedule. At 2 o'clock, we'll be having our session with Deepak right here. 3 p.m., we'll be having our group meditation. And 4 o'clock, we will now be having yoga with Sarah in the room that we've been using. And we will also still have the beautiful, beautiful yoga with Adriana and Erica in the other yoga room as well. So both options will be available if you'd like